Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Caritas. Today is May 7th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope everyone out there is doing well. Before we get to a couple stories today, I just want to send a shout out, a very happy birthday to my grandma. I'm not going to give her away her age, of course, but my goodness, you'd never guess how old she actually is. She has more energy than a lot of young people I know. Again, she does more by 8 o'clock in the morning than most people do all week. And she listens to the Capital News every day, so she's also one of my biggest fans, and I couldn't be happier than that. Love you, Graham. Many, many more. We'll see you soon. So a couple stories that we're going to talk about today as a follow-up to really a couple stories that we talked about yesterday, which is no surprise. That's what we were predicting was going to be on the docket today, and it is. So there's some updates with the trade wars between the United States and China. And then there is still the three-ring circus alive and well in Washington, D.C., which has to deal with the Democrats against President Trump and now his tag team player, Attorney General Bill Barr. It wasn't enough just to simply go after the president. Now we have to go after the Attorney General because according to the Democrats, he is a liar. He lied to Congress. He should have to resign. These people are clinging to air right now. I don't even see grasping at straws. They are grasping at air. The Democrats are shaking in their boots. Tables are turning, ladies and gentlemen. The Trump administration, the Justice Department, is starting to do a 180. Everybody was looking at Trump. Now Trump and company are going to be looking at the investigators. And the Democrats know where this is going. Now, they're not going to tell their constituents where it's going. The mainstream media, particularly MSNBC and CNN, they're not going to tell their audiences what's going to happen. They still want you clinging to hope, if you're an anti-Trumper, that, well, he obstructed justice. It has nothing to do with Russia anymore. There is no collusion. There is no conspiracy. Not with the president. Not with Don Jr., not with Ivanka, not with Eric, not with members of his campaign, not with members of his administration. No one. Zero. Zip. Nada. Pay no attention to that. You were told for 2.5, 3 years by the mainstream media and by Democrats that he was done. The president was kaput. He was finished. They were going to crucify him. They were going to impeach him. They were going to lock him up and throw away the key. Not so. Not so. But nevertheless, the Attorney General made a decision to release a report, the Bob Mueller report, and now they're clinging to hope that they can maybe make a stink out of obstruction of justice charges because there are some things out there that I have to agree with don't look that great for the president, especially not on the surface. And when we live in a headline-driven world, and when we live in the state of politics where that's all it is, it's headlines, and where somebody can make an argument out of these types of statements made in this report, well, that's what they're going to feed on. So it's no surprise. We knew this was going to happen. To what degree, we didn't know. But now we know that they are, turning the heat up. Not only on the president, but now they are calling into question the integrity and basically the competence of our Attorney General, Bill Barr. That's what they're doing. Because they need to distract the American people. They, the Democrats, need to distract the American people from what's coming. And what is coming is going to be fantastic for the rule of law. Equal justice under the law. This was a complete witch hunt. This investigation was started as a fraud. And now there are some things coming out in the news that it wasn't just the Trump campaign that may have been under investigation, but there may have been other Republican campaigns during the 2016 presidential campaign that were also under investigation or under surveillance. Or can we use the word spy? I mean, you can't use the word spy. I don't know why, but you can't. The Democrats don't like that word because it has to deal with them. It has to deal with the Obama administration, and they're trying to protect President Obama and his administration because that's exactly what they did. They abused their power. They were spying most definitely on the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency as it went forward. Obviously not President Obama, but I mean the deep state continued with it Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, the Orrs. The names go on. Jim Comey, Andrew McCabe. We know the names. We have some of the testimony. We know what they did. We know what they were thinking. We knew about the insurance policy. We knew about people wanting to wear a wire, to use the amendments to try to overthrow the President of the United States to get Vice President Mike Pence in there. I mean, I don't know if they actually thought that was a better idea, that Mike Pence would be the better option, but they just really despise Donald Trump. So I guess the next guy up is better, has to be by default. That was the rationale. Unless maybe they had an insurance policy for Mike Pence, too. Maybe they had another option. Maybe Nancy Pelosi was going to get in there. Who knows? That's the extreme of this stuff. Because now you have Nancy Pelosi out there saying, what's Donald Trump doing? What's going on here? Telling people, instructing people not to go forward and testify before Congress? Well, that's an impeachable offense. Mr. President, don't you know this? You're going to be impeached now. Now, Nancy Pelosi finally got it in her head after 3 years. Is the president goading us? That's what he's doing. He wants us to take this to impeachment levels. That's what he wants. He wants us to say, yes, we're going to move forward as the House. We are going to move forward with impeachment. That's what he wants. Where have you been, Nancy? That's exactly what he wants. He wants it. He knows it will backfire on the Democrats. He knows he's going to come out smelling like a bunch of roses because he didn't do anything wrong. There was no conspiracy. There's no obstruction. Now he's telling people not to go forward and testify. All right, I mean, how much more information needs to come out? I'm serious. We've had a 2.5-year investigation with Robert Mueller. No collusion, no conspiracy, no obstruction of justice. Robert Mueller didn't like how Attorney General Bill Barr did his 4-page summary, but he didn't say in his letter, or anything else for that matter, that he disagreed with what was ultimately said. No collusion, no conspiracy, no obstruction of justice. His letter didn't come out and say, I agree with you, Attorney General Barr, there was no collusion, there was no conspiracy, but there was obstruction of justice. All hell would be breaking loose if that was said, but it wasn't. He just didn't like how Bill Barr handled it. That has nothing to do with anything. Furthermore, those 19 pages in which Robert Mueller was concerned about were entirely released a few weeks later to the public, unredacted, and to Congress, unredacted. So Robert Mueller was making a stink out of nothing, and a whole bunch of Democrats, particularly on the Senate Judiciary Committee, were making a big stink about nothing. They didn't like the process. They didn't like the style. Okay, too bad. You still got the information. I mean, these people are going to complain about everything. It could be a beautiful day. There's one cloud. Well, it's cloudy. There's one little cloud up there, and it's cloudy. That just ruined my entire day. That's who we're dealing with. Nancy Pelosi talking about impeachment again. I mean, here it comes. Here it comes. I mean, did it ever really go away? Maybe to a degree. She was trying to play ball. We had the infrastructure conversation. I mean, where's that at? Is that going to make it through? We were talking about that. I mean, I don't anticipate that that's going to make its way through anytime soon, although it could. Highly unlikely, especially now because you have all these investigations going on. You have all this drama going on. We have a vote tomorrow before the House Judiciary Committee as to whether or not they are going to hold Bill Barr in contempt of Congress. That's still scheduled as far as I know. So we're going to see what happens there tomorrow morning. Then you're going to have that drama. And that's going to take place. That'll be another day or two story. Then it's going to be back to something else. Whether it'll be other things that Jerry Nadler wants to get to, whether it's something else that Nancy Pelosi wants to get to, Adam Schiff, Maxine Waters, Elijah Cummings, we know the names. We know the names. We know the clowns and the ringleaders in this three-ring circus. Unless and until the president declassifies information. Unless and until we finally get a report out from the Office of Inspector General when it comes to the Department of Justice and what was taking place. When it comes to the report on Jim Comey and how he handled himself as director of FBI during this time when he was there, particularly when it was pertaining to these investigations surrounding the president and company. Where's it all going to end? Well, it better be with people held accountable. Not just in the newspapers, not just on presidential tweets and statements, but with people held accountable in a court of law. These people are innocent until proven guilty, just like everybody else. No matter what the story is, the Capitol News honors the law, honors the tradition of the United States of America and other Western civilizations and societies, for that matter, when it comes to the rule of law and having innocent until proven guilty as the benchmark, as it should be. These people deserve their day in court, but they better be in court. Because if you're going to say the president was guilty of XYZ and he did not do XYZ, but then you have somebody like Hillary Clinton who did XYZ, but then at the end you say, oh, well, we don't have any reasonable prosecutors here at the Department of Justice, therefore we're not going to prosecute. You got a problem. You got a big problem. So when's it going to get straightened out? And if it doesn't get straightened out, then we have no republic, we have no country. The two-tier justice system will continue. If you have a certain name, if you have a certain size bank account, you're above the law. It makes no difference. This is really the opportunity of a lifetime for this president and his administration to really start draining the swamp. Because at this point, he hasn't even drained the kiddie pool. He just hasn't. I mean, now, has he been handcuffed? He sure has been handcuffed. He's been under investigation for 2.5 years. And he's up against a $4 trillion machine. That's how much the federal government spends every year, and has for quite a while, and will continue to do so, if not more, for quite a while. So $4 trillion is a lot of money every year. People who have their hands in that big piggy bank, they're not just going to roll over and play dead. They're not going to say, oh, well, you got us. We're just going to roll over. We're just going to give up. Not going to happen. So the president is definitely up against a huge mountain. Huge mountain. He's been under an immense amount of, I can only imagine, stress. I mean, what did he think was going to happen? I mean, he thought he was handcuffed. He has a special prosecutor. His first attorney general recused himself. I mean, what did he think he was going to be able to get done? I mean, despite the fact that he's had all of these things flung at him, he has gotten quite a bit done. And I give him credit for those things. But there's a lot that he has not. And time's a ticking. We're only 18 months away, 16 months away from the 2020 election. And you can't just have these people, quote unquote, brought to justice overnight. That's just not how the system works. I mean, they have the right to a defense. It's going to take a while. They're going to have very expensive, very fancy lawyers who are going to drag this thing out as long as possible. But any type of shedding of light on this issue is better than nothing. But there has to be justice attached to it. And it has to be swift. It just has to be. Because if this is just more politics, then there's no difference with President Trump versus President Obama versus President Bush and Clinton. Makes no difference. He was just another politician. He said what you wanted to hear. He got elected, and he did what he wanted to do. And who's paying for it? You and me. This president has the opportunity of a lifetime to really straighten this country out. It is no easy task, given how deep-seated all of our issues are. And a lot of them the president and his administration don't even talk about, which is a travesty in and of itself. Hopefully he gets to it in the 2020 campaign, although I'm very skeptical that he will. Although I do think that some of those issues will be trumped by a lot of the information that comes out on how dirty and corrupt very senior officials and members of the FBI and the Justice Department and members of the Obama administration were when it came to the 2016 presidential election and all those campaigns. Because I do think it was beyond the president. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just beyond, if it was just Donald Trump, I'd be a little surprised. Because nobody knew if Donald Trump was going to be the nominee. It could have been Ted Cruz. Could have been Dr. Carson. Could have been a whole host of people. Could have been Jeb Bush. Not likely Jeb Bush, but you know what? You get my point. So it's if the Obama administration is going to look into one, what's going to stop them from looking into others? Get the point here? And then we still got other stuff to get to. We still got to get back with Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. We got to go through that stuff. I mean, there's not enough time. I mean, I try to keep these podcasts to a half hour. be respectful of your guys' time, try to talk about some of the most important issues that I think are worthy of our times. But, we'll see what happens. We are going to get to it, though, I promise. And if we can't, we're not going to get as in-depth as Judicial Watch does. That's their job. But check them out. You can YouTube Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch. And I urge you to do so, because there's a lot of good information that comes out from Judicial Watch that just does not make it into the mainstream media. Tom Fitton will go on Fox News every once in a while. Is he on CNN? Is he on MSNBC? I highly doubt it. That's why everybody is so shocked on those programs, especially the audiences, because they were sold a bill of goods. But if you pay attention to a few key characters and people who are doing some investigative work and people who are watchdogs over the federal government and are suing the federal government for documents, shedding light as to what our government is doing in our name, which is exactly what Judicial Watch does. It's a great service for this country. Most people have probably never heard of Judicial Watch, and if they do, how many of them spend the time to actually listen to Tom Fitton and other members and actually go on the website and read these documents? Because this is our government, folks. This is what the government is doing with our money and is doing in our names. And I'm sure if you took the time to read some of these documents and listen to some of these presentations that Tom Fitton puts on there, these just basically they're just updates. They're policy memos, they're briefs. You'd be beside yourself. People who are in the know are upset. They don't like the fact that a lot of these things are done in their name. A lot of people have no idea. And that's the problem. It's the lack of understanding. Yet people are, they're excited to go vote for Crazy Bernie. They have no idea what the government has been doing, and Bernie wants more of it. How can you square that circle? How can you make any sense of that whatsoever? Yet nevertheless, this is where we are. This is why we are allowed to have an idiot sitting in Congress, sitting in a hearing room, eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. How can he get away with this? If that was the president, everybody would have been up in arms. That is beneath the office of the President of the United States, blah, 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 blah. How could he do such a thing? Yet I guess it's perfectly fine for a congressman to do it. They have no standards whatsoever, which if you look at a lot of them, I guess that makes sense. But they can do it. The Democrats can do it. They can make fun of it, and then they can say that, there's nothing to see here when they're called out on it. Or you're stupid, or what are you paying attention to that for? There's so many other things, blah, blah, blah. Yet if Trump did it, it's a crime. It's an impeachable offense. This is our president in 2019, but it's okay for this idiot to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken. Three-ring circus. Lunacy. This is why I use these words, because they are descriptive of what's going on. I'd like to use harsher words, but I'm trying to keep this family friendly, at least the best I can. So we'll see what happens tomorrow with the contempt hearing as to whether or not members of Congress or a member of the House Judiciary Committee are going to vote to hold Attorney General Bill Barr in contempt of Congress. Makes no difference at the end of the day, but it will be a political story. And we will have to talk about it because it's going to be all over the place one way or the other. But I have to commend President Trump and his team playing hardball with the Democrats in Congress on this. Spent $30 million, 2 years, no conspiracy, no collusion, no obstruction of justice. What more do you want? Are there not issues that this country needs to solve? They're shaking in their boots, believe me when I tell you. Now, moving forward with some more news regarding the trade war. What was some story that broke? Because yesterday we had a lot of the Asian markets sell off because the tariff man, our President Donald J. Trump, came out over the weekend saying, you know what? These trade talks are just going too slow. I don't like it. I just don't like it. They're going too slow, and I'm going to have to raise tariffs on Friday. So we had some quasi-positive news come the American markets open. Okay, when the exchanges opened in the morning on Monday, we had some news come from China saying, you know what, okay, the negotiations, the trade delegation that we're going to send to Washington, D.C. this week, it's still on. We're still going to come. We're still going to continue to hold our conversations. And so, despite the fact that the Asian markets sold off pretty violently, and you had some pullbacks in the European markets, but by the time this news came out, the American markets were able to pretty much stage a rally from their opening lows and just pretty much went on a straight line, not quite to the upside, obviously, but they were down very, very much in early morning trading. So they were well off their lows. However, we had news that broke late last night regarding U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, who came out and said, you know what, tariffs are coming later this week. That was pretty much the statement. So, and I have to be in agreement with this. This is what I am anticipating is going to be the outcome. That there will continue to be tariffs at the end of this week, and there are going to be more tariffs at the end of this week. Because I really don't see a trade deal being struck after an additional 2 days of negotiations Thursday and Friday. Just don't see it happening. Because the Chinese, at least according to our side of the negotiations, are saying, well, you know, they're starting to renege. They want to renegotiate some of these points. Probably just stall tactics at the end of the day. You know, well, we got to go back on this one. And now, you know, it's a hardball. It's time for hardball. The president's going to step up to the plate. And at this point, he has to. He's playing the strong man. He has to follow through with it. I mean, barring some sort of real miracle that there is an agreement, and because it's not President Xi who's coming over this week, it's still the trade delegation, so there's not going to be an immediate signing ceremony. I mean, maybe we can iron things out entirely or 99% come Friday, and then maybe they'll say, well, you know what, next week President Trump and President Xi will get together and they'll have a signing ceremony, and because that's the case, we will not increase tariffs because there's not going to be any point. I mean, we're going to have a signing ceremony next week, so why increase tariffs at all and cause that whole bunch of pandemonium and price changes just for a very short period of time? Why have businesses go through all of that hassle? Wouldn't make any sense. I don't think that's going to be the case, though. I really don't. I just don't think that the trade negotiations are going that well. We've been saying this for months because we've been told for months that they're going swimmingly well, that they're going to be historic, that they're going to be remarkable and fantastic and the best deal ever. And then all of a sudden this weekend, nope, going too slow, going to have to raise the tariffs. Increase the percentage, increase the total amount of Chinese goods that are going to be subject to tariffs. Now, we had a conversation yesterday regarding the Committee on the Present Danger, a handful of market analysts, journalists, authors who pretty much pay a lot of attention to China. We're saying, you know what, this really isn't about trade, which is the same thing we've been saying here at the Capitol News for quite a while. Because when you do the math on the numbers, it's a flea on a dog at the end of the day. 10% on $200 billion, when you're talking about two economies combined over $30 trillion. Is it an annoyance? Are you going to feel it every once in a while? Yeah, but it's not the dog. It's not the meat and potatoes. It's a couple fleas here and there, all right? What this is about is a superpower in the United States of America against a rising and an up-and-coming superpower, at least economically speaking, with China. And we have a new sheriff in town. We have a new president in town who is not going to be bamboozled, who is not going to be taken for a fool. You had the Obama administration who looked the other way. You had the Bush administration and the Clinton administration look the other way. China was able to say, yeah, you want to do business with us? You want access to 1.4 billion people? That's fine. You can come in, but we're going to take your intellectual property and we're going to force you to give us your technology. So those technology transfers for 20 plus years to give them a better footing on the economic playing field. Didn't have to do it. You could have played hardball. You could have said to the Chinese, you could have said, well, you want access to all this stuff? Well, then it's going to be on our terms, not on your terms. But that's not how it was. So you can only imagine the backroom deals that were probably struck. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but just use your imagination on that one. how many palms were greased off of that, because you have some of these speakers at this committee on the present danger. Again, the focus was on China, particularly that of Steve Bannon, a former advisor to the president, in making this point that that corporate America is the public relations department for China, and that Wall Street is the investors' relations department for China. I happen to agree with that, because anytime you turn on the financial mainstream media, it's all about China. China, China, China. They've cracked the economic code. They are not subject to economic gravity. They can defy all odds. Why? Because they have the right blend of communism, a dose of capitalism, and 1.4 billion people. And once you have those things, boom, you cannot make a mistake. You can never come back down to earth. Your markets just go up, 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 and away. Your GDP is always 6%, 7%, 8%, double digits. You're never going to come down. Not going to happen. That's a bunch of baloney, but that just goes as evidence to what Steve Bannon was saying. These companies, these corporations, they could have said, no, we're not going to do it. They could have had a sense of pride in nationalism, a sense of patriotism to the United States of America, which afforded them the ability to become the companies that they are. They could have said, you know what, we're not going to do it. They could have went to Washington, D.C. They could have went to Clinton, to Bush, to Obama, and said, you know what, Mr. President, we want to do business in China, but we're going to do it on our terms, not on theirs, so you're going to have our back on this. Now, maybe those conversations happened, but I highly doubt it, because you have to look at what happened. It was on China's terms, not ours. Unless, of course, everybody is being greased. And when you look at the amount of money that China has been printing over the past 20 years, well, maybe they did. And that's why China is really the bigger threat here. Not Russia, not the Iranians, not the Venezuelans, not the Cubans. China. China's a big problem. And that's at the heart of these negotiations. And the Chinese are finally being called out on it because we have a new sheriff in town, President Trump. They don't like it. And now they're trying to stall for time because they think maybe, just maybe, President Trump will not win re-election. So what's the point? Let's try to stall. Ain't going to happen, folks. President is not going to play that game. He will walk away from a deal. I mean, he has it in writing. That's the art of the deal. If this is not the right deal, we're going to walk. And I will we'll just smack more tariffs on him. He doesn't care because he's out there taking to Twitter saying that this is contributing to our great economic miracle, that China is writing checks to the U.S. Treasury. Of course, that's not true, but that's the spin he puts on there. And with everything else that we've had in these discussions, continuing investigations of President Trump and his campaign, him setting it up if this economy and or stock market turns south, he is laying it up. He is setting the stage to blame the Federal Reserve. Now he has another one. He says, well, look, we were trying to negotiate this great deal. We thought that we were going to get there, but the Chinese got cold feet. And now he's going to blame China, which is what he did when he was campaigned Donald, blaming a lot of the problems on China. So he will continue to do this. So I'm not going to be surprised if these quote-unquote great trade talks fall apart. And I'm not going to be surprised if there are tariffs come the end of this week. But this is going to be the story front and center for the remainder of this week. This is political, it's geopolitical, it's economic, which is exactly what the Capital News is all about. So stay tuned. It's going to be an exciting week. Thank you so much for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you as always. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out. Leave your comments. We would love to hear from you. This is the Capital News. I am Alex Kreitis. Godspeed.